what would drive revenue in these respective leagues? Let's start there.
Revenue will be just having in the marketplace what people want to see.
Exactly.
These sports leagues is not for the players. It's so that they have a place to entertain the audience. That's what it comes down to at the end of the day.
But certainly for entertainment value and ability, I think that's skewed in favor of the NBA, which drives the conversation of the disparity between the two, right? Or, as we kind of anchored on the compensation between the two.
And how about you just let the marketplace do its thing?
So this is kind of like the economics within sports, which sports economics is definitely.
Yo, B, let's go. You may have seen the clip and maybe heard word of mouth, yet another podcast. Man, what could it be about? Is it truth or opinion? A couple of contradictions. We're here to challenge tradition and twist your vision. So we set on a mission to bring you rebel wisdom.
Welcome back all to Rebel Wisdom Podcast. This week we're going to be discussing the difference between women's sports and men's sports. More specifically, the disparity between the two. As a lot of you may know, this is a pretty hot topic in today's society, circulating the media. And typically we don't really do current events. We just kind of pick a touchy topic or something we're kind of passionate about or like to speak on, and we dive into it. But we thought this one was relevant and interesting, and it kind of piqued our interest. So we're going to go with this today. So like I said, we're going to be talking about the disparity between women and men's sports professionally, and then how they're getting compensated, and just the disparity. Well, compensation and how those different sports and those different athletes within that sports get treated. So before we go, B, you got anything you want to throw in, or you just want to roll with it?
I think we're gonna say definitely some touchy things that you mentioned earlier, and it's okay. Some people may agree, some people may not agree. I just will hope that we learn something from it. They gain some insight that they haven't really thought about, and then respectfully argue about our positions.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it. That healthy discourse, and like you said, hopefully learn something. All right, so I'll start this off by just kind of painting a picture. When we're talking about sports and the development of sports over a period of time, and how far sports in general, not talking about anything specifically right now, I think the human race as a whole has come a long way from a performance standpoint. I mean, nowadays, people are faster, stronger, bigger, maybe not like height-wise, but certainly muscular. And I think a lot of that has to just do with like the not natural selection, but just the natural progression rather of humans. But then a lot of that is attributed to the development of sports science, nutrition, stretching techniques, everything that falls under that umbrella that help develop a human, physically in the realm of sports. So with that, that transcends race, or not race rather, but genders. That's not specific to males or females. That's just across the board. I think we've come a long way. But with that, I think when you're looking at a sport as a viewer and a spectator, we're looking to see certain things in that sport, like what excites us and what arouses us. So I'm going to ask you, I'm going to take us out of this podcast realm and put us in a video game setting. If you were in a video game, right, and we were to create a player, and you have all these different attributes you can shift and max out or whatnot, how would you create a player? Like, what are you looking for in a player? We'll just say any sport. We'll keep it generic right now, or in a specific sport. Like, what are you looking for in a player?
Yeah, I just want that player to be physical. They don't have to be, but it just adds more entertainment aspect of it. But more importantly, the skillfulness of that player, whether if it's in the NBA shooting a whole bunch of threes or doing crazy finishes, like those are the skill part that it's always entertaining to see. And it doesn't have to be basketball either. Even with football, making crazy catches or crazy jukes, those are not contact, but I like it, and I like watching those things.
Okay, I would agree. And I want to preface this for everybody that we're definitely not any sports analysts here. This is highly opinion based. and just what we've gathered from kind of listening and watching over time recently. And for me personally, I'm not even a huge viewer of professional sports, which some people find ironic because I was a collegiate athlete. But I do not watch many professional sports at all. And if I do, it's usually basketball. But even that, it's usually the NBA. It's rarely, if ever, the WNBA. And unfortunately, I think that mimics probably the greater population. But with this previous draft class of the WNBA, they generated a lot of publicity. And I think, across the board, hopefully that's shifting for the women's sports at large, that they can get, more viewership, more compensation, et cetera. So it's an exciting time in the sports world, period. But I did want to preface that, we're no experts by any means, but we're gonna get into some juicy stuff today. So be with what you said, and as you as a personal viewer, what you would like to see in a player or a sport. I would agree. I think, speed. It's always cool to see somebody that's fast, whether it's a baseball player running plates, whether it's a soccer player running up the field, whether it's a basketball player running down the court. Like, I think someone that's very fast is always intriguing, the jumping abilities. And then once you get past like the speed and the jumping, the physicality, which you speak of, then I think people hone into the skill set of a player. And skilled players tend to separate in their leagues. Like you said, basketball, like when you're able to dribble the ball on a level beyond your peers, or soccer, I think it's also called dribbling the ball, like your foot coordination. That's always fun to see, right? That generates that excitement. So here's a hot take. Do you think naturally, biologically, chemically, if those are things people like to see, that men are, we'll start with, are stronger, just innately, are stronger than women? Would you say?
Yeah, I don't think that's a hot take at all. I think people that's against it, they might not like hearing this, but at the end of the day, it is a fact.
Okay.
That men give everything else being average to the level of women. So in this case, with professional athletes, they're at the top of the top.
Correct.
At that level, men are generally, everything you said, stronger, faster, quicker, with skill that's tied into it. All of those things.
Right. Okay. Yes. So, right. May not be a hot take. Maybe, I guess it's subjective. But I think biologically, men are faster, stronger, and it's to no fault of the women. That's just nature. Hence, why there's different leagues. Because, some people are like, well, why don't the women and the men just play in one league?
And women would not be able to play sports at that point.
Yeah. Well, I think they would be able to play. I think the competition would be severely diluted. Or, they just wouldn't, if they were on a team, they wouldn't get to play as much because, again, it's the levels of, physicality, speed, strength don't really align. So I think that is one natural difference that we can determine there. So with that, and we're kind of now starting to shift into a conversation of maybe like equality. I want to talk about equity versus equality, because I think this is going to have a heavy position in this conversation. So when I looked up, and I re-looked it up just to make sure that I was understanding these definitions correctly. I started with equity versus equality. And if you just, in a quick Google search, a picture that I've seen multiple times in the past, but that also quickly comes up, is it depicts 3 people trying to look over a fence, basically, and it assigns them these boxes to stand on. Now, it shows equity as making everybody to the same level, right? So if you wanted to get everybody to a level of 7 feet, let's say, to see over a fence, and let's say you have a individual that is 6 feet tall and an individual that is 3 feet tall, and you want to get them both to 7 feet tall, equity would be assigning the person that's 6 feet tall a 1 foot box, and the person that is 3 feet tall a 4 foot box to get them to 7 feet. It's like, okay, that is an equitable situation. Yeah, makes sense. For equality, though, you would give them the same thing. So the person that is 6 feet tall, you would give them a 1 foot box, and the person that's 3 feet tall, you would also give them a 1 foot box. And in this example, they wouldn't be able to see over the fence. That was kind of the example that was depicted, and I thought that was a good analogy to help me visualize those definitions. So in that sense, now you translate that to sports at large. That begs the question: is the NBA, is the National Basketball Association, is that an equitable across both of these leagues professionally when talking women and men? Are they given the amount of, we'll say, resources, most interestingly money, to bring these players in these leagues to the same level across the board? And I would say no.
Okay, no, I've got how you said it. Okay, so I'm thinking about it in the equitable portion is having a separate league of women, men and women. So in that case, I could see part of it being equitable. But when you think about the resources and the training and the money that's involved in it, I would certainly agree. I don't know if it's fact or not.
Okay.
But I would imagine the NBA having better trainers, better the supportive administrative side to make the players just perform better in general. That's my thinking. It may not be true. It may be pretty equitable, but
okay. And that's an interesting point with the total of the resources. The NBA, may have, like you said, again, this is not factual at all. Better trainers, and that'd be interesting to look at. I don't know. I think the most easily seen of all of the resources or things that are being given to these players is the compensation, which we all know definitely is not. They're not paid at the same level across the NBA and the WNBA. But like we were saying before, or I guess if we back up a little bit, what would drive revenue in these respective leagues? Let's start there.
Revenue will be just having in the marketplace what people want to see. Because at the end of the day, viewer wants to just be enjoyed. Exactly. These sports leagues is not for the players. It's so that they have a place to entertain the audience. That's what it comes down to at the end of the day. So if the audience is watching basketball and men's basketball, that's where the money's going to go. Vice, if they were watching, I don't know, women's pickleball league, if that's the new craze, then that's where the money's going to go.
Okay, good. And you introduced the word entertainment, which I very much consider professional sports to be entertainment. Now, for the people, for the athletes participating, it is very, it's very much a job, and it provides for their family. That doesn't take away from the fact that it is entertainment. They are athletes entertaining a audience, and the larger majority is the audience viewing. So now this is kind of a circular moment. If we take it back to what we described and what is probably similar for other viewers, what we want to see, it is, the athleticism, the speed, the physicality, the ability, the natural ability, which we argued is biologically, it's just more present in males. So with that would drive the viewership up in the male leagues, right? That, to me, that kind of makes sense. Therefore, now speaking only from a compensation standpoint, it is not equitable because they are not paid the same in comparison to the women's league and the men's league. For the reasons we just stated. And, to your point, that probably translates to if the men's league is generating more, which it is, like, factually, then that allows them to get, the teams are generating more, the league is generating more, the players are generating more. That allows them to get more things, right? Yeah. So I think it is not equitable, but for justifiable reasons, I'll say.
Yeah, I think it's very fair.
Yeah.
Because, if they're not making as much, it is impossible to pay the women's basketball players as much or just as equal as the NBA players. It's impossible. You cannot do that. At the end of the day, NBA and WNBA, any of the sports league, it's a business, right?
Yes.
And if they're trying to have this narrative and become a charity to, make have all these players make the same amount of their counterparts, it's not, the sport itself is not going to exist in the long haul. So yeah, it sounds so good. I mean, like, hey, let's get this player. Let's do this, but it's just not real life, and that's why I think people are getting so mad about it. But they're also not. The compensation part that everyone talks about is mostly from the association, right? That's their base salary. That's what they're talking about, but they're also not talking about all these sponsorships that they're getting, right? Like, for example, I guarantee who was the number one draft? Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark. I guarantee that this is reality. People are going to hate me for it. That's fine. But a bench player on an NBA roster is going to be better than Caitlin Clark and whatever, right? It's just the difference between men and female. But hear me out. I guarantee Caitlin Clark will make more in sponsorship than the bench player on the NBA.
Yeah.
I guarantee that. So now we're going back to, is that fair? Then maybe the bench player, the third string point guard on a whatever NBA team, maybe they should get paid higher so that they can match the sponsorship levels of these stars. You can always go back and forth.
Yes.
So my belief is that whatever the marketplace is willing to pay, and I think it's naturally gonna pay what they're worth.
So you brought up a bunch of good stuff that I want to anchor on, and I'm probably gonna forget some of it. But you mentioned fairness, which I want to circle back to, and then kind of market demand. So you ended with saying with paying them what they're worth. Now what's interesting to see is what determines worth. Is it ability? Because to your point, the players that are deemed less able or not as skilled in the NBA might stack up differently if they were compared to the top players in the WNBA. So now is worth determined by, again, skill and ability, or is worth determined by popularity? How much viewers is this individual bringing to the sport? How much buzz are they generating? So that's a different question, because again, if it's ability, that disparity is probably going to be greater. But if it's attractiveness or viewership, now the gap closes, because there are some high profile players in the WNBA, as noted now, especially with this past draft class, that are getting sponsorships and that are inspiring little girls and bringing people to watch basketball that never have. And now it's not a different story, but I think that gap closes a little bit, if that makes sense.
And just for the worth, I think what they're worth is what you mentioned is a factor that could contribute into their worth, like their skills, their ability, their popularity. That's all an attribute that they have. But their worth at the end of the day is how much revenue can that player bring in for the organization. And that's based on, skill, ability, and popularity. Like, I'm thinking about, for example, Jeremy Lin during the Linsanity days, right?
Yep.
Like, you could argue, sure. Obviously, he's a top-level athlete. He's good, but you can say that he's probably not as good as some of the people that, or he probably had more popularity during that time than some of the players that was equal in ability and skill,
if not better.
Skill.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, his little run that he had in was it early 2010s or whatever?
I don't even remember. It was a while ago now.
But he probably brought in so much money, and that probably increased his worth for at least a couple years.
Yes.
So that's what I think that's what my definition of worth would be. You can be the greatest player of whatever. Like look at Mike Vick, right? He was a crazy level athlete, really good. I mean, just a good NFL ball player.
Mm-hmm.
But then he has negative connotation and stigma that brings along, it's a negative popularity thing.
Okay.
And then his worth is going to be adjusted because of that. Because some people may boycott his jerseys or going to his games because of the ideologies that, they don't align on that side.
Okay.
So I think it's all of those.
All right, cool. So let's make a bucket, right? We're going to have a bucket. We're going to have a worth bucket. And let's talk about everything that goes into that bucket that generates a person's worth. Because you also just introduced something else, which is character. So I think we can put things that contribute to worth. Ability. What do we want to say? Viewership, which is how much viewers you bring to that sport. Character. Because certainly if you have a bad reputation, there have been over time great players that were compensated less and became less desirable by teams and organizations because they had a bad reputation. So, Mike Vick, that's one example, but those people do exist. So we'll throw character in there. What else? Do we got anything else?
Yeah, just like the energy side for the entertainment. Like if someone hits a three,
entertainment value, I'll lump that in viewership, or maybe that might be a better term. So ability, entertainment value, and character.
Yeah, like when when you get a super hard hit in the NFL, and then them standing over the other player, right. That's just funny and that's just entertaining.
Hype. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Entertainment value. Okay. And then some of those crossover to your point, your original point when we kind of came on live today. You were saying, you like to see people making crazy layups and things like that. That ability translates into entertainment value.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some bleed over there. And sometimes people's character also translates into entertainment value. People, some players are quiet. They just go about their business. They just keep their head down and work hard. Where some people are loud about it. They dunk on somebody, then they step over them. Maybe like, dang, this dude's disrespectful. Character may be in question, but like people like to see that. So entertainment value. You know what I mean? So there's some give and take there. Okay, now that we have our bucket of worth, and we can look at these in both leagues. Everything is kind of related. So the ability of the NBA, if we were taking on average, like the mean ability in the NBA, again, is probably a little bit higher than the WNBA, and we said they all translate. So now you're driving the entertainment value up in the NBA. Character, I mean, that's pretty even across the line. I don't think there's any natural disposition to character either for or against the women or for or against the men. I mean, your character is your character. So I think that helps as an equalizer. But certainly for entertainment value and ability, I think that's skewed in favor of the NBA, which drives the conversation of the disparity between the two, right? Or, as we kind of anchored on the compensation between the two. Now I want to use that to circle back to what you said previously when you said fairness being that you're given things or you're granted, we'll just say resources in accordance with what you're worth. That is fair.
Mm-hmm.
In any job, if you're providing more, you're putting out more, your value added increases, like what you're giving, your compensation increases, right? I think that's a fair statement, no pun intended. But so in this case, now we bring it back to the question, is it fair how they're treating the WNBA versus the NBA? Is there resource allocation or is there compensation fair? What do we say?
Personally, I do. Here's my thought. I do think it's fair because at the end of the day, regardless of the sport, they play the same sport to an extent.
Yep.
Like they have the same ball. They play on the same, or I guess they don't even have the same ball.
Yeah.
Do they even have the same court?
I think the court size is the same, The ball size is definitely not the same.
But then the lines and stuff are the 3-point line is definitely shorter, right?
I don't know. I know from college to NBA it is. From WNBA to NBA, I don't know.
Okay. Anyway, so what I'm trying to say is, with men's basketball, women's basketball, I'm leaning towards the fence of it's a different league. Therefore, it's somewhat, you can argue it's like a different sport. Yeah, it's both basketball. No, I get that, but it's a different entity, right? So with it being a different entity, if we're trying to say that men's basketball players and or just the NBA versus WNBA, should it be resources, pay, whatever, across the board? Should it be fair? To me, you can take a step away and then compare, like, okay, then if that's the case, then how come the men's basketball and men's ping pong team isn't getting the same resources or the same pay? That's just a different organization. But then now people are able to make that connection much easier because, like ping pong, like it's not as fun, it's not as popular. Boom, that's the thing. It's the same exact narrative on WNBA versus NBA. It's just not as popular.
Right.
And I think even at the highest level athletes, they're gonna know. They know that they can't compete physically with the men's league. It just, like, no sane person is gonna say that. And even, like, look at Serena Williams from tennis, right? I think she had to play against like a man or something, and then like their media wanted to, or something like that. I don't know the exact story again. But then she was like, dude, like, I'm not playing against a man. Like, I'm literally gonna get destroyed. I'm just not playing against them. That's just not.
I never heard that.
Yeah. Okay. And she's she's arguably one of the best tennis players ever, right?
And great athlete.
And the guy that she was playing against, he was like ranked, like, not even close to being the best.
Interesting. Right, so that's an interesting story.
It sounds bad. I get how it sounds. Like, it's not a fairy tale. I get that, but that's the reality piece of it. So I mean, yeah, I do think it's fair.
Yes. Okay.
And then the whole thing's, one day this particular female sport at the professional level is going to get paid more than the men on average. And now what? We're going to be like, oh, like, we demand equal pay for the men. That's not, that narrative is not going to fly. No. And how about you just let the marketplace do its thing?
So this is kind of like the economics within sports, which sports economics is definitely a thing. I actually took a class on that in college. So you brought back into the equation equality, right? And again, it sounds good. Oh, men's basketball and women's basketball should be equal. I would not concur with that statement, because going back to the original definitions of equity and equality, equality would look like us giving everybody in both leagues the same. There would be no disparity in pay between players within the WNBA. So like the worst player in the WNBA and the best player in the WNBA would get the same pay. Also, those two would get the same pay with any status of player in the NBA. Equality, everything's equal, right? Everyone gets the same pay for being members in both respective NBAs. I do not think that is, again, my personal opinion, don't think that's best. I don't think that makes the most sense. I don't think it aligns with other industries. I don't think for any reason that that's what it should be. Again, it sounds good. Now, should there be equality in, how we treat players? I mean, yeah, but that's like for life. Like, we should always treat all people the same from a character perspective. But yeah, when we're talking about, resource allocation maybe or compensation, I don't think there should be. It goes back to the fairness piece, which is driven by the market. Essentially, yeah, you get what you kind of put out, in a sense that, yeah, what you generate, viewership, or which translates to points, like, your ability, what we put in that worst bucket, character, that is how you will get compensated, and that is fair. on this fairness piece, if we put these respective organizations, NBA and WNBA under a microscope, and we kind of talked on it when you said the difference in the ball and possibly the length of the distance of 3-point line, there are differences, and it begs the question, why are there these differences, right? So the draft age of the NBA and WNBA are different. You can go in the NBA at a younger age. Vice the WNBA, you have to be a little bit older. The ball size is smaller in the WNBA versus the NBA. I don't know if the rim size is smaller, but the ball size is definitely smaller. The size of the team, the NBA can carry a maximum of more players than the WNBA. These are all small nuances that one could ask, like, why does this exist? And I don't have the answer, but I think it all plays a part of the larger question of the disparity between the ability and then possibly the overall worth. So I think those are some interesting, more nuanced details to look at when we talk about the difference of these two. Now, some people may argue that, granted, everything we just laid out, that, hey, they're treated differently just because they're women, which is like the crux of the argument. Now, if this is truly to be fair and there was a metric for, again, I just keep going back to compensation because for me at least, that's the easiest thing to quantify. If it was truly fair, it'd be like a pay per, I don't even know how some of this stuff you would measure, but pay per point. Like every point made in a game is worth X amount of dollars. Every assist in a game is worth X amount of dollars. If you could quantify like how many fans were in that sport because of X players, but then you have like jerseys bought, like people's names have their jersey on them, would equate to X amount of dollars. Then you could truly get down to the bare bones of like the fairness. Like, oh, this person gets X many $1 million because they're getting the most points, they're getting the most assists, they're getting the most jerseys sold. But some of that stuff, like how many fans you get in an arena, you can't bring to one player.
But then if you do that, that's gonna destroy the sport. Like,
right?
Why the hell would I pass if I can make more money from scoring more?
Exactly. Yes.
It's gonna destroy the beauty of the sport. And then I think like people want to change the policies for how it sounds rather than the actual implications that it will bring. And that's the same with politics too. Like they want to make it sound so like, oh, like we do this, but then when you think about the causes of those actions, it just, no one wants that ever.
Yeah.
Like I guarantee, like if people are like, oh, make it fair, make it, I'm just going off your example. I know it's not saying that we should do this, but just playing along with the story, like, oh, if we did that, I guarantee the WNBA players would be like, no, like this is the dumbest rule. Like we don't want this,
So, but I think that's interesting, and this makes for a good conversation, is that not completely the market, but if we let like economics kind of drive the sport, I think that is what it would shift to. So I think what would be my personal opinion, what would be optimal in a sport is, yes, to have some solid statistics, and it needs to be driven by statistics to a degree, but you also need to maintain the integrity of whatever the sport is, right? Like, how do you stay true to basketball and foster people's passion to play the sport for what the sport is, but also treat them accordingly to their bucket of worth? You know what I mean? And I don't know if there is I don't think there's a grand equation that keeps it both sides even. Like, oh, we're maintaining the integrity of the sport. However, this person's better, or this person brings more worth, so we're paying them accordingly. So it is hard. Because honestly, if it truly was fair, I think it would shift to what I was trying to like make a case for, I agree with you. I don't think it should be purely what they bring to a table, because they can bring more than just points. Again, it does go into the personality and the character and the inspiration. And then, the influence is a big one, because people have other things outside the sport that may help them, that may bring people to watch them. Like, for instance, LeBron has like many entertainers do, he has his own tequila brand. Somebody might not know anything about basketball, but drink LeBron's tequila and be like, oh my God, this tequila is great. Like, what tequila is this? Oh, it's LeBron's tequila. Oh, who's LeBron? Oh, he's a professional basketball player. Oh, like, let me go watch. You know what I mean? So it's a very dynamic just equation.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it would be hard to maintain the fairness and the integrity of the sport simultaneously.
So, the one thing that I would stand for the top athletes in WNBA would be, they're doing something that compared to what their relative competition. For example, Caitlin Clark, right?
Mm-hmm.
She can shoot many more threes than her peers can. Mm-hmm. I do think that she deserves to get paid for that, for being able to perfect the craft.
Okay.
In the sports realm where there's money and whatnot. But her downfall is going to be because of the WNBA as a whole is not bringing in as much revenue as it could.
Yeah.
They just physically cannot pay her that much.
Yeah.
Right. So as if the level of competition in the WNBA increases as much as it can, while the level of competition in the NBA doesn't increase or decreases to close that gap between the skill level, then I think they're going to naturally see more money.
Yes.
But that's still at the league level. That's not accounting for all the sponsorships that she's getting outside of that. Yeah. I think I read it's like she's making like $100K or something, right? From from her salary job.
I don't know if it's more than her salary. I wouldn't be surprised though.
No, I think Caitlin here. Let me look it up real quick.
Yeah, Caitlin
Clark salary,
and it's funny because she and other players, like her, are already. You talk about the market; they've been these like anomalies introduced to this market, and they've already driven not the price up, but the the compensation for these players up and the resources.
Yeah, look at this. So she makes. From her base salary, is $76,000 a year.
Yeah,
which, dude, I made $76,000 as a college graduate on just getting a regular job.
Correct.
That's insane to think about from a professional athlete. You're right. But you go into what she's associated with, and now she's gonna be signing a $28 million deal with Nike.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, she's getting her money's worth. It just from a different avenue.
Right.
And then because I think it's more in lines with how great she is compared to her peers, and she's creating the motivation piece for younger female athletes, and it's all a great narrative. Therefore, is equated to compensation.
Yeah, it goes in that worth bucket.
Yeah, but people are just too stuck on just the front-facing pay.
Yeah,
that's not how people make their money. It's just they don't understand sports, how sports economics works.
And then to your point, it those sponsorships can be an equalizer too, because now Caitlin Clark could be making more than somebody in the NBA because of her sponsors, because of her worth, than, like you said, the last dude on the bench on you name whatever NBA team, because he doesn't have sponsors, because he's not generating viewership, or his worth isn't as present in the NBA. So when people express discontent towards these organizations, NBA, WNBA, what have you, and the neglect for women or whatever, they might want to redirect their discontent or their anger towards these companies, because Nike is the one choosing, who they want to represent. I think if you isolate the WNBA and NBA, I think they're more along the lines of fair.
No, I think
which is what we're talking about, like the disparity between the leagues. It's pretty fair. And maybe, should they get paid more, or should NBA players get paid less? Maybe, I don't know. Maybe, sure. But comparatively, one league to the next, I think it is more along the lines of fair. And again, I'm no analyst. I haven't crunched any numbers to back this. But with the general, definitions we're using and the concepts we're presenting, I think you could argue it is fair. But it should not be equitable, and it should not be equal, which sounds horrible.
Yeah,
I don't think it is.
Yeah, I mean, from the conversation alone, you'll probably know which way I lean in politically, but I really do think people get paid their worth in not just sports, but in a lot of places.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's another topic that this is going to be a separate podcast itself, but the disparity in pay between men and women in general, not just in sports. And then, you know, I don't want to get into it, but I don't agree with the narrative that the women just get paid less than men. That blanket statement. Okay. There is if that's true, and I believe that statement is true for a reason, not just because they're a woman, because being a woman also carries other things with it, right?
Right.
And then, you know, while we're talking about this topic before we started recording, we were talking about the pay gap between the male models and female models.
Yeah, I think you should speak on that real quick. Yeah,
like models, like I don't know why, I can't explain it, but when you think of a model, you think generally a female model, right? Like that's
I do, at least, right?
Yeah,
I do, and I think a lot of people would. So yeah,
right. And so that's for a reason. Like people, I'm sure the modeling agency figured it out that when you have a female model to represent XYZ products, they're going to make more money from it. That's why they're bringing in more worth, the more revenue for the company through advertisement, sponsorship, whatever.
Yeah.
So now we looked it up, and average female, you know, if the average is higher, that means, you know, the top earners are much higher too. It's like if the women models are making like on average like 100 to 120 a year or whatever, that's given no context, no location, no industry, whatever. And on the contrary, men models are getting paid $70K on average. And that's literally now that, you know, that's a prime example of men getting paid less than women for the exact same thing that, you know, but then now it will sound weird if we try to fight for men's pay gap rights to make it equal. But then no, it's not like it just doesn't work like that. If you don't like it, get out the industry, because they're going to pay what they're worth. And that's just a cold like stone fact. And people, like, you know, the narrative again sounds bad even for like men and women models. They do the same thing pretty much. That's like as close as it can get, and they get paid less. Like, what's that about?
Yeah, it's like, you know,
so
yeah. No, go ahead.
No, I was done with my thought. But just,
and that's a great, like you said, we won't get too into it or going into other jobs or other industries. But as a quick example to contrast with the NBAs, I think that's fantastic, because in a model, what's desirable. So the contents of your worth bucket changes. It's less character, it's less ability, rather than, and you replace that with physicality and how you look, right? The beauty standards. So your ability may be, you know, your ability to pose, your ability to upkeep your body, maybe like hygiene routines, like not that's your ability now, but it's more of that entertainment value is viewership in pretty much how you look. Like it's large in part beauty standards. Like you said, I think in that industry, for whatever reason, women are what kind of sell, like what is desirable by society. So they get paid more for that reason. Like we don't control what society, you know, wants. Like to your market comment, the market drives that. So that is very interesting. And these, I'll say, aren't absolute. Like there could be, nothing's perfect. There could be some discrepancies behind the scene, you know, in any of these industries or whatever. Sure. But I think the overall driving factors for why these people are getting paid what they are kind of makes more sense than it's getting credit to. I think that's the best way I can say it. I think it makes a lot more sense than what meets the eye and what people are up in arms about, going back to why women are getting paid less in the WNBA. And maybe I just am not well versed on what the complaints are, because to me it seems like people are upset that people are getting paid less than WNBA players are getting paid less, or getting treated worse. That might be a different conversation than NBA players, but maybe it's that. And I know some of the issue are that WNBA players alone. So if we stay in the confines of WNBA, that these new players that just got in the league are getting paid way more than some of these players that have been in the league for a minute, which is interesting because a lot of what we said still hold true. What is in their worth bucket? If they just came in the league a year or two ago, but they're generating way more buzz and contributing to the teams more, they're going to get paid more, which I will caveat that with, there probably is a piece of longevity, right? Like if you're in a company, you get paid more over time for like your seniority and your tenure, like just for being in that company, right? Mm-hmm. But a bigger, what's a good word? A bigger, not disruptor, but a bigger driving force of that pay is your performance. Like your longevity is a small piece, but your performance is a greater piece. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. No, it definitely makes sense.
Yeah. So like these old heads in the WNBA, like, oh, you've been in for 10 years, your pay will adjust accordingly, but not as exponentially as someone that's balling out. Mm-hmm. And I think I've also heard online some frustration be expressed from fans in that regard, like, oh, they just got in the league, but there has been some players that have been around for a while that were also good. I guess that's the next point of contention. Like, there's these NBA players that have been around for a while, and they're like, they got 3 rings, and they've won Defensive Player of the Year, and, in comes Caitlin Clark. She ain't won nothing yet in the WNBA, but she's getting paid all this money. But the counter argument, well, Caitlin Clark just got to the league, and all of a sudden, and there's other girls, not just Caitlin Clark, she's just the most prevalent example, and viewership spikes by 20%.
Yeah, and then look at all these like women, or like I'm talking about like younger, like elementary, middle school, high school, college. They look up to her. Like, I want her shoes. Right? Like, how they just same as, they look at a young kids and we're like, oh, I want some J's. We're like, what? So that's literally making them money. And then as a Nike endorsing her, that's like the investment that Nike is putting on her to get them a return.
Yep.
And then, yeah, it's entertainment and story and ability for them to sell other stuff because of their performance or story, or I guess in this, what we're talking about is worth.
Right.
And it's a little off topic, but I really want to get this out because it's crazy to me.
Okay.
That people that argue for the NBA or WNBA and the pay gap closing between the NBA and WNBA, they're the same person that you're going to see courtside on an NBA game.
Yeah.
Oh, stop going to an NBA game if that's what they're trying to. You're literally hurting your own.
Good point. Theory, yeah.
Like, if enough people, because of this pay gap situation, if enough people was like, hey, I'm never going to an NBA game, therefore, and then in counteracting that, I'm going to only go to WNBA games, I guarantee the pay structure will shift. Yep. I guarantee it. But there people that's for it. They're the ones that they prefer watching NBA games over WNBA games. It's so ironic and just pretty much delusional. If you're arguing for the pay gap and watching NBA games, even on TV, you're making them money by watching the ads. Like, it's crazy. It doesn't make sense, and that just kind of speaks for the validity of the argument. That they're just trying to play a good character, and that in theory, yes, it does sound nice, but that's, we can't live in theories in the real world.
That's a bar. Hey, B just told y'all to put your money where your mouth is, basically. Hey, you saying one thing, but your pockets are supporting something else. That is a phenomenal point to add on. Thank you for that. That was good. I like it. I feel good after that. Do you have anything additional to add?
I mean, that's, again, like, I do want to get into, divergence of what my comment was, but even in, what we talk a lot about money and investments, and it kind of relates to that point as well. I see so many people, or I hear so many people literally that I hang out with in real life. They're like, oh, I want to make more money.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, and then you look at their actions. I'm like, I don't believe that you want to make more money. If you really wanted to make more money, you like, if that was your sole purpose to make more money, I think you can. But you're choosing not to. You are making an active choice not to make more money. And it's like, for example, like, I want to make more money. So I sacrifice my weekends and after work to go make more money.
Mm-hmm.
And when I do that, surprise, surprise, I make more money.
Yeah.
but like people are like, like, oh, I want to work my 9 to 5. I want to make more money. But then when they go home, they just want to relax and scroll TikTok for 2 hours, watch a YouTube show. Just, you know what I mean?
Some people gonna feel that. Yeah.
Yeah. Like my wife and I, we make multiple 6 figures together. And on the weekends or after work, we go do Instacart runs. So we can cover our food bill for the month from just doing Instacart.
Mm-hmm.
And the people like my coworkers think I'm freaking crazy for doing like driving Ubers and doing
you
Instacart
just got
with
clarity,
it.
Man. Yeah.
But like, I want to make more money because
yes.
that's going to translate to money's going to translate to what I really want. It's
right.
So it's, I don't know. Those people all remind me about the same. They all say they want something, but I know they're just saying it. Like I know in true deep down they don't want it. They're comfortable with what they're currently doing. And yeah, right. This is gonna get off topic, but it just kind of reminded me of, it's the same audience. They say, hey, decrease the pay gap.
Yeah.
But then, hey, it's Friday night. Let's go watch an NBA game.
Dude, I agree with you. I guess for the sake of putting a little more spice on this, can somebody want something to change but not be contributing to the change? Can those both exist? Like, let's say,
I mean, yeah, it's at the end of the day, it's just a want.
It's like there's a word.
It's just a dream.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, like it'll be cool, but then like they don't want it bad enough.
Yeah, it's just the level of want. There's just got to be a word to differentiate the two. Because I feel like you can want something and do absolutely nothing for that thing, but yeah, you just don't want it bad. You don't want it bad enough. I feel like that shouldn't even be called want. There should be another.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
But no, I mean, I'm just saying that for more conversation. But I certainly see what you're saying. Which goes back to the market again. Yeah, like these people that want WNBA players to get paid more. Sure, your contributions are a drop in a bucket, a drop in the ocean, but your actions would align with what you want. If you watch WNBA games, if you go to WNBA games, you are directly supporting that organization, and in turn, those players.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. So this kind of spin off from I mean, it's still a sports topic, but do you believe that? I know the answer, but I want you to elaborate on it.
Okay.
Do you think that we should combine men and women for like-kind sports in the leagues? Like for basketball, you can combine the leagues. In tennis, you can combine the leagues. In swimming, you can combine the leagues. In soccer, you can combine the leagues.
No, I don't. And
but that's what's fair, right? They should all play. If everything's the same, then they should just all play in the same league.
Actually, that's not fair, because as we said, fairness is you're given in accordance with what you like produce. So it's you're compensated in accordance to your value. If women, again sticking with basketball, in accordance to our worth bucket, are inherently less valuable, then it would be not fair to combine the values of men and women in the context of basketball. I want to emphasize that, because they would be disadvantaged. And again, if they was combined and, our worth bucket for ability, entertainment value, and character, and they're combined, their ability and their entertainment value would automatically decrease without them even doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
So their character will absolutely can remain the same, but those other two. And then their run the risk of getting paid even less. So, or less females will make it to the league. So, no, I don't think they should be combined. And if I just thought of something that might kind of highlight what we're saying. Again, not to get too far off topic, but I always thought the definition of sport was weird. Like, in my head, a sport has some athletic component, but that is not true. A sport like chess is a sport, like definitionally. But in chess, again, I don't play chess. I've never watched a chess league. Maybe there's men and women leagues. I'm gonna jump on a limb here, so we might, somebody could tear me up or hold me accountable on this. If I don't think chess, like there's a chess leagues exist. I don't think that's separated by gender. And so now you ask, like, why isn't that separated by gender? Because there's no inherent difference between like your mind. I mean, emotionally and whatever, like men and women biologically are different. There's some difference, but it's not like it's not like the physicality, the blaring difference you can see in between jumping ability, speed, things like that. So like men and women can play each other in chess because it's more of a it is more equal like yeah.
At that point, chess is only your mind, using your mind, and I agree. Correct. But then it's only people that's like against, okay. Well, first of all, it's crazy to me that some people want men and women leagues for physical sports. Again, like the narrative sounds crazy good.
That they want different. Oh, you're talking about the same league. I got you.
Yeah, like some people are like, hey, like for the transgender person in swimming, I forgot their I forgot their name, but people are like, oh, like why don't you just combine like what men and women swimming leagues, like we're all equal. And then I'm just like, dude, like it's crazy to me that people think that. And then I'm not trying to say that it's because men and women, like it's just for the physicality part. Like for sports,
yes. Like
for like chess that you said, they can play together. Yes. Because there's no physicality involved in it.
Right.
And I mean, yeah, like that's it. Right. I'm not saying, hey, in Jeopardy, when you go play Wheel of Fortune,
right,
there's men and women leagues. It's not like that. There's no physicality. It just when it comes to physicality portion that people, I think they don't want to accept it. It's like, oh, we're not worse than men. We're not saying that. No one's saying that. Mm-hmm. Just as men have certain attributes that's more desirable in sports, like the ability, like quickness, their agility, their ability to jump higher, whatever. Yes. But then women also have different attributes that make them who they are.
Yes.
Right? Like they want everything to be equal, but then they never want to appreciate the differences, because those differences are what really, makes a beautiful partner or couple, or even in culture and society. Like if everyone was equal, like we just live in like basically socialism and everyone gets the same pay, like there's going to be zero prosperity in anything. The garbage man, I don't say, like, I don't want to,
right, you don't belittle
but then, but then, lower skilled jobs, like, okay, let's say fast food worker. You can tell, regardless of like what you think of the job, it is less skilled to go work at a fast food restaurant, because you can go do that as a high schooler with no skills.
Yes.
Vice a neurosurgeon,
right,
that studied for 12 years just to start their career.
Yes.
Now that like all this stuff, like, oh, they should get paid the same. Like, dude, like you're gonna destroy civilizations, like with your ideas. It's so dangerous. But then the narrative sounds good, so it's I don't know.
Yeah,
it's hard because I see the point. I really do. I'm not saying that they're illogical. The outcome would be illogical. They're not going to want that either. But then I'm scared of their ideas spreading to other people that may believe the idea that's gonna ruin our future civilization. Like, those people that's like saying those nonsense to children, that's more gullible, and they're gonna believe their respected adult. I kind of think about it on that. Even though we're talking about sports, whether we have sports or not in civilization, like, we'll function just as fine.
Yeah.
But those ideas are, I don't know, I think they're doing more harm than good.
Interesting. Yeah, you're kind of extrapolating those ideas to the bigger, like, macro picture of society, which is also interesting. And I think, right, like, the narrative sounds good. I just think there hasn't been enough maybe thought put into the topic, which, is why we're here. And yeah, it's funny because, under the umbrella quote of, like, we want equality. Yes. And even, like, personally, like, do I want, I would say you may, or someone may have heard me say the phrase, like, I want equality. I do. But when you boil that down, it's like, I really want everybody to have a fair, as we've defined in this podcast, chance to be great in their own right, or be successful, or be, whatever it is. And to your point, right, if people are arbitrarily saying, hey, women in basketball should be getting paid the same as men, and then you take that logic or that thought process and you slap it on to another industry or something, like, you have to drill down into what these people are really trying to get at, because I think the narrative might shift if we do that. I just don't know if it ever gets down to that level of detail. Because, to your point, it actually could be corrupt, or maybe not corrupt, counterproductive, if we're just, giving everybody the same thing. There has to be some barometer and some metric of separation, which is essentially what fairness is. Like, you getting compensated accordingly, in accordance with your value. Like, period.
Okay. Well, let's do the final wrap up question then.
What we got today? You got one?
Yeah, I'll ask you a question. So in 2024, looking at the NBA and WNBA, should WNBA players and NBA players be paid the same?
No. I do not believe WNBA players and NBA players should be paid the same. And for those people that think that they should be more fairly compensated, I think their issue might be more with the sponsors. I think they have a little bit more ability to discriminate more than the actual leagues themselves. So, for going back to the example of, somebody that's been paid in the league, been in the league for a long time, and may even have these rings or whatever, and make X amount of money. In total, I'm talking about league and sponsorships and everything. Vice Caitlin Clark coming in, and now, again, her base salary isn't that much, but she has huge sponsorship revenue. So, again, I think their discontent may be a little bit misplaced. But long-winded answer to say, I do not think the leagues should be paid the same. What about you?
I agree. I don't think NBA players and WNBA players should be paid the same at all.
Yeah.
Well, the argument only exists right now because on average NBA players make more than the WNBA players. But I believe they should just be paid whatever the league and the sponsors are willing to pay. Because they're going to look at their return on investment of, hey, we're giving this guy a salary of, $1 million. They better bring in more money, more revenue from that spending the $1 million. And if they're not, they're going to get cut. If they're not going to make that money, that's how the marketplace works.
Yeah.
That's how business works.
Yeah.
And they all knew going into it. Like, college level D1 women's basketball players, they're not dumb. They know how much they're gonna realistically make if they're not the top player, or even if they know that number. Like, they're not blinding themselves of that matter. And it happens literally everywhere. Like, you can choose to go into a particular field of work, and that field of work naturally pays more than other other industries. Mm-hmm. Even though you're both, I don't know, let's say you're both operations manager on this industry versus that industry, one's going to make a lot more because of the industry that you're in. And you're going into it knowing that fact.
Yeah, it's not right. It's public knowledge.
Yeah, so if they don't like it, like, sad to say, I think a lot of people, like, I think there's very few WNBA players that actually, like, not just a want side, but like really want to come. They're the NBA versus WNBA pay gap decrease come into fruition, because that would just destroy them. That's not going to be good, in their favor. But if they do think that, you don't have to play basketball.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? So, yeah. I don't know. It's your choice at the end of the day. And like, look at business, for example. There's no pay gap in business. If you're successful, you're going to get paid. And if you're not successful, then you're not going to get paid. That's regardless of, like, male, female, all these mixture of males and females. I don't know, all the genders and all that stuff. Like, it doesn't matter who you are. If you're good, you're going to get paid. That's it.
Yeah.
So if they're more fan of that style model, then go start their own business. They have a choice to make a difference, but a lot of people, they just want to sit back and complain about it.
Well, y'all heard it here first. WNBA, NBA might be a little more fair than you think. Or, that's our opinion, at least. Well, I think we got a good one today. Super excited. That was fun, as always. So we're going to wrap this thing up. Big thank you. Thank you, B. Thank you for all the listeners. It's been a good time, as always. We'll catch you guys next week.